Hey everyone, welcome back to another Sports Debate video. Today, Shivam and myself will be discussing who we think will be the top dog in the Western Conference in light of the recent injury of LeBron James. Do we think the Lakers are still going to be the team to beat, or do we think a new team is going to rise to the top? To start, we're going to go to Shivam.
All right, so I feel like after the injury of LeBron James, I definitely think the Lakers are not the team to beat, especially because of Anthony Davis also being out. So, with those two guys being out, I definitely don't think the Lakers are the team to beat, and I feel like that's probably a general consent in the NBA community. So I feel like the teams that are really left for probably the people to choose from would be either the Jazz, the Suns, the Clippers, or the Nuggets, and you can also add the Trailblazers in there. But the team that I'm gonna go with for who I think will be the number one seed at the end of the year in the West is I'm gonna say the Jazz, and I'm gonna say the Jazz because one, they currently are the number one seed, so they already have a 2.5 game advantage over the number two seed, the Phoenix Suns, and a 6 game advantage over the Denver Nuggets and the Trailblazers. So, we're nearing the second half of the season, and they already have a lead over some of the other teams that are trying to catch them in in the Western Conference. And I'm on this website right now called Thinkathon, and it pretty much just says like the teams that have the easiest remaining schedules up to this point, which is March 23rd, and the Utah Jazz have the fourth easiest remaining schedule in the Western Conference. So I feel like they're already the number one seed. They already have some ground made up by 2.5 games over the Suns, 6 games over the other two teams, and they have the fourth easiest schedule remaining in the whole entire league, not just in the Western Conference, in the whole league. So I just feel like they'll continue to start picking up their stride against some of those weaker teams that they'll face. Like their next five, they have 2 games against the Suns, then the Nets, but then they have 2 games against the Lakers, couple of games against the Timberwolves. So I mean, it's pretty easy for them. So I'm gonna go with the Utah Jazz.
Right, so you mentioned the Phoenix Suns being the second seed, and they actually are my choice. Just going off of kind of like you picking the Jazz, we saw the Suns beat the Jazz head to head in the regular season. Although they lost in the preseason, I don't think that should be really counted towards regular season because preseason is always different. But in the regular season, we did see the Suns beat the Jazz, and I believe everyone is healthy. You could correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not 100% sure on that, but
I think they're all healthy. I think they're all healthy.
yeah. So I mean, just taking it by like looking at the Suns roster, you have 10 players who are scoring more than, I mean, sorry, you have 7 players who are scoring more than 10 points per game. You have Devin Booker and Chris Paul, who are both extremely talented and very. Chris Paul is extremely smart. Devin Booker has been on this team for a long time now. He's definitely friendly with the coaching staff, works well with them, and is definitely a good leader for all these players. There's been an interview with Chris Paul talking about how he feels working with Devin Booker alongside them two being leaders together, and Chris Paul said he loves working with him, and he's still learning even from these younger guys because I believe last year the Suns had the lowest average age of a team. So it's all a bunch of young guys who are bringing their hard work ethic to practice, like as Chris Paul was talking about. And even though Chris Paul has been in the league for years and has been a lot more experienced than the rest of these guys, he says he's still learning from all these younger guys, which is something you could really appreciate an older guy, like a veteran, saying about these younger players who are definitely showing a lot of talent, especially Devin Booker, who, is averaging nearly 20, probably 25 points per game, somewhere around that area. And continuing on about Chris Paul, I mean, he's almost like having another coach on the court, whether he's actually on the court or off the court. He's got that, insanely talented and experienced mind, which I'm sure he can use to either help the coaching staff or even coach his own players on the court while he's off the court or on the court. And I think that's crucial in having someone, if you really want to make a long run for obviously the playoffs or even the number one seed like we're talking about in the West.
And yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from with the Suns. Like that was like the team that I was initially leaning to at the very beginning, but then I ultimately changed my mind to the Jazz, obviously. But I can definitely see where you're coming from with the young team standpoint, because at towards the end of the season, older guys obviously tend to get a little bit more tired, and the
Right.
younger guys tend to keep that same amount of energy towards the end of the season. And they also have, like you said, point guard Chris Paul, the veteran leadership to keep them, like intact, like not to get too over energized, but you also got like a task to do go out and win the game. But still that happy medium with Chris Paul there. But the ultimate reason why I went with the Jazz is simply because of that easy schedule that they have. Like they have currently, I believe the NBA.com uploaded their Defensive Player of the Year ladder up to this point in the season, and Rudy Gobert is number one. So like if the season ended today, Rudy Gobert would be the defensive player of the year. So they have the defensive player of the year. They have a very good man off the bench in Jordan Clarkson. Donovan Mitchell is a very good player who I feel like is still a little underrated in the league. Doesn't get talked about as much as he probably should. And I mean, I just feel like they have a very balanced team. They have shooters, they have defenders, they have scorers. I mean, and also like the easiest schedules, like they're gonna be beating up on teams like the Timberwolves and the Rockets. I don't know if they play the Rockets, but they played Timberwolves a couple of times in the remaining schedule. So that's that mix. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the Suns made a late season push with Chris Paul and Devin Booker and they took the number one seed. I wouldn't be surprised at all. But I feel like if I had to place a bet, I feel like my safer bet would be on the Jazz. So that's why I ultimately went with them.